Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us for another Dare Dallas webinar. This week, we're very, very pleased to join Aurelia Turrall, who is one of our new jewellery specialists who has recently joined the firm. So, Aurelia, first of all, welcome to Dare Dallas and welcome to the Dare Dallas webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Aurelia, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into jewellery.
Yeah, so I started my career in auctions, working in sort of client services, and then I decided to specialise in jewellery, which I did back when I was living in Paris. And then sort of 10, 15 years down the line, and I've become a jewellery specialist and enjoying every minute of it, of looking at exceptional pieces and wonderful history behind old pieces, and getting to enjoy the auction side of it, and valuing all sorts, which is really wonderful. And really pleased to be here today for this webinar to talk about Art Deco, specifically Cartier Art Deco.
Fantastic. And as you said, the thing that we're kind of touching on today is Art Deco. So what is interesting about Art Deco, and why does it stand out amongst all the other jewellery from, you know, the 20th century, do you think?
Well, it's got it was very experimental. It's a real step aside from the old traditional style. So I'm going to go a little bit into detail about how it changes compared to the previous eras of Belle Époque and even Art Nouveau. But possibly because of the sad news that we've had this week with the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh, thought we'd just start the webinar with a picture that I found online of the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yes, of course, very, very, very sad news. Now tell us about this image.
So this is Prince Philip in Cartier in London on New Bond Street, and he's with Jean-Jacques Cartier in the background, the gentleman with the glasses, alongside a designer. So it said that he was always very pleased to go into the studio and just he had a genuine interest in how the jewelry was made and the whole creative process. So I thought that I'd start this webinar with that.
No, it's a nice touch, and I think the royal family have always had a bit of a connection with Cartier, haven't they? I know that Kate wears a Ballon Bleu watch. Yeah, and I'm wearing mine in honour today, actually. But yeah, it's they've always had a connection, haven't they?
Well, exactly. They've always provided jewelry for the sort of the royal families and Napoleon's extended family, for example. So there's always been those connections to royal jewels. So it all started in 1847 when Louis-François Cartier acquired a studio in Paris. He was then joined by his son Alfred, and further down the line by his three grandsons, Louis, Pierre and Jacques. And then within a decade of working hard in that studio, their reputation preceded them, and then they started provided royal family, and I can't say movie stars back then, but I'd say the equivalent. And it's considered that between 1910 and 1940, it was really the golden era for Cartier. And they employed the finest craftsmen, but they weren't necessarily jewellery designers, more architects and furniture designers, because Cartier wanted a fresh pair of eyes when creating jewellery, and that really transcends in the pieces that are created, and we'll have a little look at that down the line. So early 20th century, we've got peace, finally, and with the Exposition Universelle of Paris in April 1900, that attracted over 50 million guests in 7 months. It's all a very prosperous time. We have the Ritz opening in 1898. And by then, Cartier is able to take over a new premises in Rue de la Paix in Paris. And they organize international exhibition inspired by the themes of Christmas and Easter. So they have a few exhibitions in St. Petersburg, for example. And they combine all this and the opening of the shop in Rue de la Paix with a new way of setting jewelry, which now uses platinum. And that's quite revolutionary in the way that the jewelry is mounted, as opposed to late 19th century, where it was very much silver and gold.
They were revolutionary, though, weren't they, Aurelia? Always kind of forging ahead and changing the way that people think about jewellery.
Exactly, one step ahead of everybody, and trying to be innovative. And there was a saying that never copy but always create, which was one of their motto. So then we move on to this real Art Deco movement, which is generally agreed that it's in 1925 that it was established during the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs et Industriels Modernes in Paris, although we can retrace some of the movement's inspiration a little bit earlier than that, but that's really when it all started, 1925. And when we think of Art Deco, obviously we're thinking the Roaring Twenties, peace after the Great War. So there's a lot of desire for order after the chaos of the war and all the damage that it's caused. And so we have women are taking a much bigger part in society. And that obviously influences a lot of the jewelry as well that's going to be created. They can now express a bit more, express themselves a bit more with their newfound freedom, up to a point, but getting there. And so we step away from the Belle Epoque era, which has bows and ribbons and flowers and sort of tiaras mounted en tremblant.
Big curves and metro stations.
Exactly, yes, big statement pieces and over the top and lots of it. And we now go for much angular stones and calibre cut stones as well. And so we have Coco Chanel, let's not forget, at the time, who says that we need short hair à la garçonne, like a boy. And we've got Paul Poiret as well, who's dressing women in shorter dresses, and which gives them a bit of an edge. It's masculine, but also very, very sexy. So obviously jewelry has to follow all of that. And alongside all those fashion moves, we've got new travels far and away.
So one of the pieces I think that are most synonymous, shall we say, and one of the things that Cartier are probably best known for around this period, especially in watchmaking, is this, the tank, which strangely took an influence from an actual tank, didn't it, Aurelia?
Well, exactly. So this one this particular one was created in 1919. It was launched in 1917, and it was inspired by the chaos of the front. It's inspired by the Renault tank. So we can see that the shape of the watch itself is rectangular, like the tank. We've got that creamy white dial, which has the bold Roman numerals, so very orderly and rigid, but also very chic and elegant. And we have the chapter ring, which is like a chemin de fer, the train tracks, if you like. And it's also got that nice cabochon winder, which has a bit of an echo to the jewelry itself.
That's it, and that cabochon crown has almost become a trademark of all Cartier pieces now. Modern pieces have it, and they seem to have kind of gone down the line of always having that emerald blue, sapphire blue kind of cabochon, haven't they?
Exactly, and it's really representative of keeping the link to the jewelry and making it a piece of jewelry, an exceptional watch, but a piece of jewelry. And this is, again, it's a clear step away from all the curves and the fussiness of the Art Nouveau with no frills and just very linear, chic, luxury piece of jewelry.
And it was, as we say, the time was all about fashion. It was all about, making new ground, breaking waves, and being so kind of out there without things that everyone was doing. Now, and there was another member of the royal family actually that was synonymous with this period as well, that obviously liked to don Cartier, wasn't there?
Exactly. So we have the Queen Mother in this picture, who's wearing a Cartier bandeau, a sort of headpiece. It replaces the big heavy tiaras, and this one was bought by her husband, King George VI, and it's made of 3 bracelets done by Cartier. It's essentially there are 5 bracelets, but they've picked 3 to make this this bandeau. So again, it's not discreet because it's beautiful and gorgeous, but it's simpler and linear.
It's a little bit more subtle.
Yes, yeah, exactly, a bit more subtle. And then we have one that is not so subtle. If we move on to the next picture with
let me just find that for you, Aurelia. Yeah. Wow, not subtle at all.
Not subtle at all, but worth talking about because it's so beautiful. This one was sold at Christie's in November 2019, and it made over £1 million francs, so about £900,000. Obviously, this is a statement piece, but if you were looking to be more subtle about it, you'd usually have the bandeau set with beads and tarlatan, and smaller sized diamonds and different gems, smaller stones, moving away again from the larger stones, which are real statements, and going into using calibre cut stones. And by calibre cut stones, I mean they're usually stones that are square or rectangular, and usually try to cut to fit a specific piece of jewellery. So they're really integrated in the design rather than just using one big stone.
But again, breaking ground with using different cuts of stones and different designs, no doubt.
Exactly. And so the different style here, we see that there's so much work put into this piece, but again, it's trying to keep it simpler, less, there's no garlands and frills and whatnot. And it goes with the new haircuts as well. Having shorter hair, you need something that matches the short hair, and not so much big coif that they used to have. And with that, we can then have long necklaces, which are usually called sautoir. So we can then see in a pearl necklace that I've chosen to illustrate this piece. Okay. It was done by Cartier in 1925, and this is mounted in platinum again.
Gosh, now that's not subtle again, though, is it?
Not quite, but again, it is Cartier, so it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, and it's just so representative of the movement because it's got that S-shaped link and the open work panels, which again are quite geometric. So it goes with what they're trying to do in keeping order, again, with some beautiful stones. You've got moonstones in there, which again add a bit of brightness and are slightly different from the diamonds. But obviously you have all those pearls which are just beautifully matched. And this piece was actually put in auction in May 2012, and its estimate, it was in Swiss francs, but it was estimated about £60,000 to £85,000, and it actually made £400,000 because it's just so exquisite and so much.
And as you say, it's such an archetypal piece of that period in colours, with everything. When we're talking about colours and talking about stones, what were the stones that really defined that Art Deco era?
So it starts more with very monochromatic tones. So we're really talking more diamonds, onyx, enamel at times, and pearls. So we're looking at black and white pieces, again, because the whole background of the Art Deco movement is post-war. So a lot of people are in mourning. So we've had 17 million deaths and over 25 million wounded. So it's still very raw. So the gems are there to represent people in mourning. So these are a pair of ruby and diamond earrings sold at auction again for over $160,000. So they've got a bit of color, but like I said, initially it was all black and white, really using rock crystal, diamonds, onyx, and enamel. So the color comes later on, but I wanted to illustrate with the next picture, the items in rock crystal and diamonds. If you've got it there, Alistair, maybe.
Yeah, we can skip on to the next one. But these, it's almost like a floral garland or a basket of flowers, isn't it? The way in which it's just kind of almost exploding with colour.
Exactly. So it echoes a little bit of the ancient style of Belle Epoque, where we're keeping some flower themed in the jewellery, but also using much more rectangular and angular.
I was going to say we've got baguette cuts in there, we've got brilliant cuts, and various other cuts that are actually in there. It's a nice use of their kind of their knowledge of stones, isn't it?
Exactly, it's a nice mix, and these are set in platinum as well. So again, it's a step forward away from the traditional white gold and silver pieces.
Let's have a look at this next photo that we are going to see. And what can you tell us about this? Obviously a very kind of monochromatic kind of image.
Exactly, so this one is set with rock crystal and diamonds. And that was, again, sold at auction for over $200,000. And even though it was 20 years ago, it just goes to show that a piece of that caliber is still very desirable.
For those people at home that don't know, can you tell us what it is?
So it's a bangle, and so the core of it is set with rock crystal, and the sides, you've got these channel set diamonds, which just bring a lot of brightness and chic to the whole piece. Brings it all together.
Again, it's one of those things that particularly impressive, and I'm not sure whether people will actually know that rock crystal was actually used in the construction of jewelry. Was it mainly Cartier that were doing that, or were there other manufacturers that were kind of exploiting those kind of not so precious stones as well?
It started with them mostly. At the time, it was especially pearls that were very valuable in the market, and in fact, pearls represented over 60% of Cartier's turnover just around the 1920s, and it just crashed.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually that's quite bizarre. I wouldn't have thought that. That's incredible.
Yeah, and it was only with the Wall Street crash that the price of pearls dropped as well. So I think then all the jewelers, and Cartier included, had to step away from the traditional pearls and move on to different materials. And we see the use of new gems and more exotic materials being used later on when we go into more colourful jewellery. But just before I go on to that one, we've got the next piece, which is another typical piece of jewellery of the period. So this one,
that to me is almost the epitome of Art Deco, the bombasticness of it, the image of those very angular lines. It's almost geometric.
Yes, everything is just perfectly square and rectangular, and it's that use of the black and white. We've got onyx here, and it's all geometric design. And there was a statement in Vogue at the time that says that, and I'm translating here, so it might not be perfect, but said a woman in Paris who knows how to dress is always dressed in black, not through laziness, but by sophistication. So I think Cartier really embodied that in this bangle, for example.
No, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous piece, isn't it? And I imagine at this point that the quality of the stones that Cartier would have been using, I imagine, were always of the best quality.
Always try to be, but then when they start using more colourful stones, we don't necessarily have perfect free of inclusion stones, because they're being carved and because they are so exotic anyway, that it's more the appreciation of the colour and the tone of the stone rather than their purity, if you like, and it's the way it's all combined together.
So for me, Cartier has always been that really nice kind of, to say midpoint is downplaying it, but that's not what I mean. But they've always captured style and sophistication and quality. Whereas if you wanted to go to a jeweler that had the best quality stone in the best quality setting. For example, you may not get that style and design that you get from Cartier. Would you say that that's right?
Yes, well, not to take away from Cartier, they do use exceptional stones, but I think that their key is more on the style and the innovation of their style rather than use of perfectly clean stones, even though they do try to mix as many positive items as possible in their piece of jewelry. Again, I think it's really their design which was what made them who they are today still. And with
you couldn't say, for example, that Cartier would produce a 3-carat flawless solitaire ring in a very plain shank, because it's just not what they would do. It's all about the style and the way in which it's produced.
Yes, exactly. So it's an inspiration from whatever is around the designers. So, for example, one of the key designers at the time was Charles Jacot, who was greatly inspired by one of a costume designer, Léon Bast, during a performance in Paris of the Ballet Russe, and he was just blown away by the mix of color that we used in the costume. So he went back to Louis Cartier and said, we need to change everything, move away from the black and white traditional and mix these colors that have never been done before and which were actually considered quite vulgar at the time. And with that came all the great travels Far East, and the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb as well in 1922. So we suddenly now have a mix of material being used, such as turquoise, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and all sorts, and inspiration from Japan and Chinese art. So that all trickles down, and we suddenly have this combination of East meets West, the boot that is being created in the jewelry, which is why now we can see with the new style what's called Tutti Frutti. Well, that name was only given in the 70s for this particular style of jewelry, but it's so typical of Art Deco and Cartier Art Deco.
Let's bring one of those images up now. So you can see why the term Tutti Frutti came about, can't you, really? It is an explosion of colour and a cornucopia of different influences throughout the piece, isn't it?
Yes, it's. I think it's breathtaking, and when you get the chance to manipulate pieces, Tutti Frutti pieces, they're so wonderful, and you just want to I don't know, play around with the piece, because there's just an explosion of colour, as you say, and just wear them all.
I suppose one would have to be relatively bold in order to get away with something so colourful. But yes, it's a lovely piece, isn't it?
It does work. So this one is called the Collier Hindou, and it was commissioned by Daisy Fellows. Daisy Fellows was the heiress to the Singer sewing machine empire. So this one, it was made by Cartier, but she used her own stones. So even though it's inspired by Indian style, it does have a big difference in that it uses sapphires, which are considered to be bad luck in India. So that is a real callback to the Western culture, but still embracing the Indian style and Indian stones.
Because actually, now you said it, and obviously I don't deal in jewellery as much as you do, but it has got that Indian influence to it, hasn't it? Quite a lot. It's now you said that, you can see it. But obviously, is that set in platinum as opposed to yellow gold?
Yes, it would be. It would be.
Yeah.
And then at the back, it would attach with a silk cord, just as many Indian jewellery does as well.
Yeah, because obviously with Indian jewellery, it would be very, very high carat, creamy yellow gold as opposed to the platinum, which kind of makes it even more colourful. But yes, I can see how it's been toned down, if you could call that being toned down. It's been toned down a tad by the platinum settings.
Exactly, and the exceptional work that went into it translates in the record price that it made at auction. It was actually passed down to her daughter. And when she passed away, a few years later, they were sold at auction in 1991. And at the time, it made over $2.5 million, which was and is
A lot.
a world record for an Art Deco piece of jewellery sold at auction.
What do we think that would be worth in 2021, Aurelia?
I think you can at least double that.
I would think maybe more. It's a phenomenal thing, and you know, such an iconic piece of jewellery as well.
You have the history behind it, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Just with the fact that somebody so eponymous with that kind of style has actually worn it. Now, the next image we've got, let's just bring this up again, is another piece of Tutti Frutti, isn't it? Shall we say?
Yeah, so this one was made in around 1930, and you've got these carved rubies, emeralds, sapphires, and calibre cut onyx, and really embodies Art Deco style. And again, you have the meandering vines, so we have a bit of the past with the style of the Belle Epoque flower style, but obviously much more linear again, and it's a beautiful, artful arrangement. And this one, it was an item that was kept in the same family for over 30 years, and then I decided to choose this piece because it was sold last year, right in the middle of the pandemic, in April 2020 at Sotheby's, and it was estimated between $600,000 and $800,000, and it made $1,340,000, which was a record.
Quite a change, isn't it?
It's a huge jump, and so that was a record for a piece of jewelry sold in 2020 and also online. So quite a phenomenal piece, and it was said that there was about five bidders really just battling it over the course of the 4 days. And so it just shows that there's always a demand for these exceptional pieces, even in the harshest of times, because of the quality and forethinking of Cartier.
Well, what are the stones in that piece?
So we've got so on the green stones, you've got carved emeralds. Obviously, at the front, you've got the diamonds, which are brilliant cuts there. But I know that throughout you've got a few calibre cuts, rectangular or square cut diamonds, and then the slightly pinkier stones, red stones, are the rubies, carved rubies, and the blue stones are the sapphires. And at the front, we have those triangular cut stones, which are onyx, and really cut to fit the piece.
Now you can see it go. You've got that standout kind of part. It could almost be. It almost looks like a pierced decoration because it looks so dark. If you see what I mean, it's very nicely done, isn't it? Now, is this a piece that only Cartier could do, or would you say that there were other manufacturers or around this period that could do such a good job?
Oh, definitely. We've got the likes of Mauboussin, for example, who are also very well known for doing such beautiful pieces and using colourful stones as well. The mix of the sapphires and the rubies are really a theme that many other jewelers will want to use later on as inspiration as well to bring in new models, new styles of jewelry. We've got Van Cleef & Arpels as well, of course, and yes, just many others, because it was a movement. So it wasn't, even though Cartier was at the forefront of it, it trickles down and it becomes the fashion. So obviously all jewelers have to adapt to the style and make their own specific items.
Was the start of the Second World War really the downfall of Art Deco, or had it started before then in terms of the jewellery production?
Well, I think a lot of it had to stop. Obviously, the use of platinum then had to be suspended, and we moved on to more, I say lighter material, but back to gold if there was gold available. And then it picks up after the war. But after the war, you see a shift from the colourful stones to heavy yellow gold again, because it's what was more available rather than the stones. But then bit by bit, where there's a reintroduction in the 50s and 60s of these nice, beautiful sapphires, emeralds and rubies, which are integrated into the piece of jewelry again, because there's peace, people can travel, and a piece of jewelry are recovered from wherever they were hidden during the war.
No, it's fascinating. And then obviously the Second World War obviously kind of created such a big shift in things and the way people considered jewelry. And I think sometimes after the Second World War, people wearing big, you know, not subtle pieces wasn't deemed to be the thing to do. And I think that's possibly why. But the funny thing about Art Deco for me, in terms of be it furniture, be it architecture, be it anything, it's one of those styles that really, whilst it was based in the 20s and the 30s, it's never really gone out of style, has it? There's always been that influence over so many different things. Brutalism, for example, obviously takes a little bit from Deco as well. And there's lots of different styles, wouldn't you say?
Oh, exactly. It's timeless, and it's one of those things you can dress up and down, and you can have the style by using very simple materials as well. But if you wanted to put a bandeau around your head, that's it. Suddenly we think Art Deco. I'm not sure everybody can get away with wearing the big collier en dos that has all those huge stones, but you never know.
Would you give it a go, Aurelia? Would you try it?
I would definitely try it. Not sure to go to the supermarket, but yeah.
Well, exactly. But yeah, it seems to me that there hasn't been revivals as such because it's always been there.
Yes, and these piece of jewelry run through the families, and then they change hands, and every now and then you have these exceptional pieces that come up at auction. And again, that the auction result for that final piece just shows that the desire for that style is not going anywhere. But you do also have the historic importance of those Cartier pieces, which have a huge impact on the prices that they make at auction, because you have that history.
Now, are Cartier still making pieces in that style for the market, or are they mainly just on commissions?
I'd say it's a bit of both, really. They draw inspiration from the old pieces, but if you had your own stones and wanted a piece similar to this, you could certainly get it made. But they obviously moved slightly away from this combination, and we know that there's all the collection with the panther. But again, that's an echo to exotic cultures, because it's a panther, and it can hold that big sapphire cabochon in its mouth, and it's set with onyx and diamonds. So again, there's an echo to the old Art Deco pieces.
Okay, so do you think then that, I mean, Cartier are a very, very different company now than they were in the 20s and the 30s, but do you think they will ever bring back, as part of their main line of jewelry, anything with that kind of influence again?
Well, it would be wonderful if they did, but I think possibly have to leave those iconic pieces in the past and use different combination. Also because the market's changed so much, and women aren't wearing such big, bold pieces, so they have to adapt to current situations and current fashions, really. So I think I don't think they will. I think it will stay in the archives and stay in the historical pieces, and they'll just come up at auction every now and then, or they'll showcase one piece that they've taken out of the vaults or whatnot and put on display and for sale. You never know.
And hopefully we will get the opportunity to see more that come up as these marvels at auctions all around the world, that somehow seem to still keep finding these fantastic pieces that, as you say, we thought were long lost in the archives.
Exactly, and we get to, because of the internet and whatnot, we get to see those pieces, even if they're being sold in Hong Kong or New York or anything. Online is the way to go. And in fact, Sotheby's have actually made a statement following this last sale that it really does follow a trend that they've observed, especially in 2019, where more than half of the jewelry buyers place their bids online. So that's a real shift in the way that the market has been working. But maybe that's for a bigger discussion for another webinar.
Yes, I think the buying without seeing argument is going to be one that kind of goes around forever. But one could argue, I suppose, that with decent cataloguing and a trustworthy auction house that knows what they're doing, you should be able to buy online without seeing it and know that it's been looked at, photographed, and catalogued correctly.
Absolutely, and you can ask as many questions as you want to the specialist, to the department. And if you've got a Cartier piece, you can pretty much be sure that it's going to be just a wonderful, clean design, soft, articulate, and just a delight to wear, I think.
Excellent. Well, Aurelia, thank you ever so much for joining me today for this webinar. It's been absolutely fascinating, and no doubt all of our viewers will have thoroughly enjoyed the story of Cartier and Art Deco jewellery. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for having me.
Not a problem. And ladies and gentlemen, we hope to see you all very soon. I hope that everyone's enjoying the fact that we can go out and eat outside, and the weather where I am currently is quite nice. So I'm looking forward to be able to go out and have something to eat in a restaurant outside. I hope everyone else is too. So take care, everyone, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.